All right, so I think, should we start? All right, so I know everyone's on a tight schedule, so I'm going to begin. So first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Victoria Fariello. I'm a member of the Coalition for 100% Affordable 5 World Trade Center. The goals of our coalition are to make sure that the tower built at Site 5 of the World Trade Center will be a fully affordable building, with a preference given to 9/11 survivors, first responders, and their families. We're also demanding greater transparency from our government agencies, specifically the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation, its parent entity, the Empire State Development Corporation, and Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, all of which have an vested interest in 5 World Trade Center. Before we begin, I would like to let you know about the next 2 actions we're asking members to participate in. The first is tomorrow evening, the Empire State Development Corporation will be speaking to Community Board 1 about 5 World Trade Center. That's at 6 o'clock. So please make sure to join in and ask questions or make comments. Even if you don't ask questions, simply being present sends a message that we're here and that we're paying attention. The second event is Thursday, September 30th at 11:15 a.m. The Port Authority is having its executive board meeting at 4 World Trade Center. Initially, this was open to the public, but at the last minute, they switched it, and now only the press is allowed in. So we are going to be outside with signs, and we will be hopefully talking to reporters as they come into the building so that we can raise awareness about our efforts to make 5 World Trade Center fully affordable. So without further ado, I have the honor of introducing our special guest, John Field from the Feel Good Foundation. John was a supervisor at the demolition company on September 12th, 2000, and on September 11th, 2001. And on September 12th, he went to the World Trade Center site to help with recovery. 5 days later, while he was at the site, 8,000 pounds of steel fell on his left foot. He has since undergone over 40 surgeries and suffers from numerous chronic pains and illnesses related to 9/11. John founded the Feel Good Foundation and made it his mission to make sure our government provided for 9/11 survivors and first responders, truly heroes with the health care they deserve. In 2009, with the help of his good friend, John Stewart, healthcare for 9/11 survivors was extended for 74 years. John's relentless advocacy and persistence is why we have healthcare today for our survivors. He is truly an inspiration to us all. John, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. And let me start by saying I did not know about this issue until you brought it to my attention, and I apologize. But I've done a lot of research, and you all have my 100% support. And whether it's a voice or physically being there or whatever the case may be, I look forward to working with all of you in the future. And this is something that I agree with 100% of my heart. And thank you for doing this, because you know, I've learned to pick and choose my battles over the last 17, 18 years. And this is one that I look forward to joining. And this should be a no-brainer. But like everything that we've had to do over the last 2 decades, you would think of no-brainers, and then you're presented with obstacles and hurdles that you either politely go around, or the way we do it, we just go through them. So we all got a story. Nobody owns 9/11, but here we are 2 decades later, and we can all be helping each other out and doing the right thing. And I look forward to doing that with all of you.
Thank you so much, John. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you. So Todd will now introduce our experts on who will speak on housing and affordable housing. So Todd, take it away.
Thank you. When we started discussing this question of 5 World Trade Center, a lot of us didn't realize how much of a history this issue has. There have been people advocating for affordable housing as part of both the World Trade Center redevelopment, but also the Lower Manhattan redevelopment post September 11th for 20 years. And we're privileged tonight to have some of these leading advocates who have written so many essays, books, organized hearings, organized community groups with us tonight. And first, our first speaker is somebody who is unparalleled in the city in terms of city planning from a progressive perspective, advocating for affordable housing, Professor Ronald Shiffman at the Pratt Institute, who actually served on the City Planning Commission in the 90s for about 6 years and is the founder of the Pratt Institute Center for Community and Environmental Development. And I started reading things that he was saying 20 years ago, and I'm really, I was impressed at how sophisticated this activism was then, and I'm hoping that we can continue it now. So Professor Shiffman, please begin.
Thank you. I want to make sure I'm no longer muted. Thank you for that introduction. I don't know if it's warranted, but I'd like to commend the group for keeping this issue alive. I think it's a very important issue. I see there are two other people here, David Kalik and others who've really been involved in this for a great number of years. A number of us worked together right in the immediate aftermath of 9/11. There was a group pulled together principally or originally by the Regional Plan Association called the Civic Alliance to Rebuild Manhattan. And that Civic Alliance brought together a great number of organizations in the city. I'll get back to an event that they had that was of enormous impact. Then there was a group called Rebuild Downtown Our Town, or what was lovingly referred to as RDOT, and another group called the Labor Community Action Network. All of those organizations got together, each of them having a slightly different focal point, but they began to look at how do we rebuild Manhattan, not only the attack site in the World Trade Center, not only as a memorial, because we felt that was important to memorialize the event, but also as a symbol of what we want this nation to be like and what the nation should be doing. And it was really interesting because the Civic Alliance at one point at the World Trade Center brought together about 5,000 people in what I think was one of the largest participatory events in the history of this country. And I had the pleasure at that time of doing a lot of the work on the floor of that event. It was an event where we had speakers from all of the agencies that you mentioned, where we were talking about what the goals should be. But the one thing that resonated throughout that audience was that we should build this, rebuild the area as a symbol to the world of an inclusionary democracy, a democracy in which people were included, where all economic groups, all racial groups, and everyone throughout the city should be engaged. We wanted to ensure that the communities that were directly affected were represented, that those that worked so hard, the way John did, to come back and rebuild and clear up that site, that all of them should be involved in the planning and the redevelopment of it. And so out of this event called Listening to the City, one of the calls was for the area to be rebuilt in such a way that it exemplified the principles of a democracy, of an inclusive democracy, and that all of the people that were directly or indirectly impacted by the attack be able to come back and live there if they chose to do that. And one of the things that much of the press focused on was the impact on Lower Manhattan. But the attack that day reverberated in every one of the neighborhoods in the city of New York. Communities as far as the Bronx or even outside of New York City, parts of Brooklyn, parts of Brownsville, Bedford-Stuyvesant, all parts at Corona in Queens, all of them suffered dramatically, whether the people were vendors on the street or elevator operators or building maintenance people or stock investors. The diversity of victims and the number of families that were directly impacted because they lost loved ones, or the numbers of people that were injured by that, or the numbers of people who economically became economically distressed, or people who were depressed because of the events. Everyone had the right to live there. And one of the things that we came together around was that there be affordable housing here. And we testified before all the boards demanding that there be affordability. So I just wanted to, I could go on talking about it, but I really want to stop by saying that we really need to see that the rebuilding of the last number of sites finally begin to include people with low and moderate income, to make sure that the communities that we build are no longer economically and socially segregated. And so I would really urge, and I really applaud Todd for the work he's doing in saying that we have to use every effort to make sure that housing in this area become affordable and go beyond affordability to make sure that every one of the projects that develop in the future benefit all New Yorkers, particularly those that were called upon to rebuild it.
Thank you, Dr. Shiffman. Our next speaker will be David Kalik, who actually Dr. Shiffman told me was really in the trenches, organizing a lot of these groups, advancing these social justice and equity issues after September 11th. Currently, he's the director of the Immigration Research Initiative at the Fiscal Policy Institute, and he's also an adjunct professor at Pratt. So David, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I organized one of the groups, the Labor Community Advocacy Network, and Ron was, I think, the only person I know who was in essentially all of the 5 big groups that were involved in the rebuilding. And yeah, I would certainly second your saying that Ron is just a huge asset to New York City in terms of planning. So when Todd called to ask me about the about housing at the Deutsche Bank site, this was essentially what I thought. So housing at the World Trade Center project, whoever heard of such an idea? So actually, anyone who paid attention to the planning concepts presented in 2002, 5 of the 6 plans identified the former Deutsche Bank building as the location of potential residential development. So what I just said, that's not something that I said. That was something that the David Dunlap wrote in the New York Times in 2005 in an article when Mayor Bloomberg suddenly decided to speak out about Ground Zero. And he said, housing made sense there. Here's how that New York Times article quoted me. They said the kind of mixed use 24/7 development that Mayor Bloomberg is proposing is exactly right. It's what the public, the advocacy groups, and the market have favored for 4 years now. So yeah, there's a long history from the, well, I'm sure you could trace it back before the building of the World Trade Center, but after, I mean, here's where we were. Here's where we were, you know, on September 11th in 2001. It was a staggering blow to the city. 2,763 people were killed that day. Our sense of security was really shaken, and it made us think a lot about the loss of life and also of a part of the city. Also who we are. But as we started to think about what we want that site to be after, you know, after people, you know, came and took the burning embers and, you know, recovered, you know, made it back into a place that was part of the city again, what should be there? And it made us think about what makes a city vibrant and exciting, and the way we would like it to be. And over again, that came back to the question of affordable housing. So for example, one of the first things we heard as we started to re-envision what would be in this, in the site where suddenly there was nothing, people wanted it to be a 24/7 neighborhood. That was a complaint from long before the World Trade Center collapse. So what makes a neighborhood a 24/7 neighborhood? They were talking about bars and restaurants and street life. Well, that's all about people living there, right? What became quickly obvious was you can try to subsidize stuff to go someplace, but really what you need to do is create the demand for them to be there. Lots of areas in New York City have 24/7 neighborhoods. They're neighborhoods where lots of people live. And so that was a big question, is how do you make it affordable for people to live there? There was the question about support for the arts. And I was pleased to hear that many of our partners working for advocacy in the arts were saying, what you really want to do is support artists. How do you support artists? Well, you need to have affordable housing. That's what people are getting squeezed out of the city. When you talk about a hub for entrepreneurship and economic growth, there was lots of concern about how do you what was going to happen to this neighborhood and what would the economy look like. I think it was clear that what was going to make the economy do better was if you could attract people to live there who were diverse, young, just starting out, and make it affordable for them to live nearby. And then I think there was also the question of equity, both because we care about equity across the board anyway, but also because there was the reality of huge amounts of public investment in Lower Manhattan, in schools, in parks, in cultural institutions. And how do you justify all of that public money going into those things if it's a neighborhood that's primarily wealthy, and if you don't have it by design as a place that has affordable housing? So here was, just to I'll go back to just give you some sense of how much this was part of our thinking from the beginning. I'm just read this from our 2002 statement. In April 2002, our first big statement as a network, we said, so this was September 2001, and then I don't know, some months afterwards, we worked to April 2002. We said public investment in a range of affordable housing in mixed income neighborhoods is necessary to enhance the business climate by making it more attractive and more affordable for employees. The growth of sectors critical to diversifying New York's economy, education, healthcare, research, biotechnology, and the arts, depend on the ability of highly talented but not always highly compensated individuals to live in the city without consuming an excessive portion of their incomes for housing. And then Ron mentioned the Civic Alliance, and there were these, I think 5 altogether, big networks of people involved in the rebuilding in different ways. We all together as a group, we formed a sort of a coalition we called Beyond 16 Acres. And that was the Civic Alliance, Imagine New York, RDOT, the Regional Plan Association, the Pratt Center where Ron was, and LCAM that I directed. And we had a public forum in 2004 at a time when there was $1.2 billion controlled by the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation that was left of the 2.7 original. But 1.4 billion was at that point left in flexible CDGB funds that could be used for kind of anything pretty much. And so we had a panel discussion, we invited the public, we had a good participation, questions about the different things that were possibilities, and then we asked people to vote. And we gave people tokens, little poker chips, that we said were worth $100 million each, and everybody got to take a stack and say, okay, divide your poker chips according to what you think your priorities are. And we told them something about what each one would buy. Overwhelmingly, the most went to housing, 39% of the total. So that would have been $460 million at the time. That was over the other priorities of economic development, community services, arts and culture, and a little bit that people wanted to put into the tunnel for JFK and the Long Island Railroad. So I think we all saw from the beginning to the end, housing, affordable housing was just critical to every neighborhood, but I think in that neighborhood where there was both not enough affordable housing and also maybe not enough housing available altogether. So I'll just close going back to that New York Times article, which says, this is David Dunlop, the reporter who wrote that, said, Mayor Bloomberg is clearly saying that he thinks Tower 5, which has been formerly part of the Trade Center project since its acquisition last year. This was last year, 2004. Last year by the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation will wind up being residential. So I'll end with that, and we can talk maybe later.
Okay, well, we will have a question period after our four speakers have concluded, but I'd like to add that all we can trace from Lower Manhattan Development Corporation's spending on affordable housing right now from their project plan is $50 million. And when you put that in the context of tens of billions of dollars, in fact, it's not just direct spending, but also indirect tax incentives. It really is a justice issue that a substantial amount more be dedicated. Our next speaker is Professor Tom Angotti, who is a Professor Emeritus of Urban Policy and Planning at Hunter College and at the CUNY-Graduate Center, and is also the author of many books about city planning, especially community engagement and community input into planning, which I think is what we're doing right here. So thank you, Professor Angotti.
Thank you for inviting me. Am I muted?
No, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for inviting me. I was there at 9/11. I was riding my bike just past the World Trade Center going uptown. And when I got uptown to Hunter College, I was told that a plane hit the World Trade Center. Fortunately, I had a bike, so I had a way to get home in Brooklyn at that time and to receive the first ashes in my backyard from the disaster. So it was a very, it impacted me personally, professionally as well. I wrote about it. I was the correspondent for Gotham Gazette at that time on land use issues. And I saw the process of the civil alliance as having great promise because it involves such a broad array of residents and businesses, civic organizations and activists. But it was not taken seriously by two major actors, the Port Authority and the LMDC. LMDC did everything behind closed doors. It was almost impossible to find out what they were doing until they did it. And so I think it's important to have an open process, a public discussion about what should be done with this one last site, the last chance to fulfill a promise to have an integrated community that's not just what it is now. Community Board 1 is the wealthiest community board in New York City. And while the city keeps talking about building affordable housing in neighborhoods that are disproportionately white and high income, it has not done so. And it has chosen an unfortunate path, which is to depend on rezonings to get 20 to 25% affordable housing, which may or may not be truly affordable. So I think this one site is an enormous opportunity for what it can do, but also for the symbolic importance of this, of having a truly public, a building with a true public purpose, providing housing for those who need it the most. So I think 100% affordable is a noble goal and it's a just goal, and I fully support it. I have a few ideas about possible instruments for getting there. One is the city is backing the organization and financing of land trusts all over the city. I'm proud to say that I'm on the board of the Cooper Square Community Land Trust, the oldest one in the city, and still going strong after a quarter of a century. And what a land trust could do is a guarantee that it be affordable for the length of the lease, which would be 99 years, renewable, of course. And as a typical land trust. So separating the ownership of the land from the building itself, I think creates a separate level of protection that it will be affordable in perpetuity, if not in total perpetuity, but at least for the next century or two. And the other thought I have about this is after 9/11, I worked with community groups in Chinatown who were feeling quite ignored and aggrieved because the downtown interests were more interested in getting rid of Chinatown or turning Chinatown into some museum village with a couple of cute buildings that would remind people that Chinese people once lived there. Chinatown did not get funding for redevelopment and was bypassed. And I do remember meetings where activists from Chinatown demanded that equal protection and equal benefits. That was not fulfilled. And so I think I would propose establishing a partnership with housing advocates in Chinatown and bringing them into the project. That would be just another small step in bringing justice to Lower Manhattan. And then the other question is how to make this a real symbol of a diverse, ethnically, economically diverse project. What about guaranteeing, just as we now have, mandatory inclusionary housing that guarantees 20 to 30% of the units be for affordable housing? Why not guarantee that 20 to 30% of the units be provided to the unhoused? People who are in the direst need and who have been failed by city government time and again for its inability to establish decent permanent housing, and where necessary, providing supportive services. So you could structure a project in a way that 25% of the units would be supportive housing for people who need it the most. You could try to do everything with this one project because it's probably the last chance to get a project in Lower Manhattan that we can all be proud of and look at as the consequence of a progressive social policy, housing policy, and not just brick and mortar.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's it. Thank you.
That's it. Okay, good, very good.
Opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Angotti. And I'd like to add that in terms of the community activism, this activism on this specific site also predates all of us. One of the members of our steering committee, Jill Goodkind's late husband, who unfortunately died of a 9/11 related cancer, was advocating at Community Board 1 as the chair of the Affordable Housing Committee that a 5 World Trade Center be 100% affordable. And several of the members of this coalition also specifically told Governor Cuomo and the Port Authority and the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation before they began this RFP that we were not satisfied with the criteria in their selection process. So there should be no surprise here that we are continuing this strong advocacy. And additionally, on the point of community land trust, which Professor Angotti raised, our last expert speaker, Elise Golden of the New Economy Project, who is a community and labor organizer there, will present specifically about what they are doing to support community land trusts, which is a major movement across the city, and is just one of the potential options for how 5 World Trade Center could be made affordable. Elise, thank you.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everybody. So, yep, my name is Elise. I am an organizer at New Economy Project, and I help to coordinate and organize with Nicely. So that's the New York City Land Initiative, which is a network of community land trusts, as well as organizations, advocates that are working to promote community land trusts in New York City. I think as of a few, so also I'm just going to recognize I'm on this little panel with the most expert of the experts of community land trusts, and I am brand new to this position, but so correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. But yeah, as of a few years ago, there was just the one community land trust that Professor Angotti mentioned, Cooper Square Land Trust. And with organizing really started by homeless people organizing, to bring about housing and try to take land out of speculation, knowing that, the current policies weren't working for them or anybody in the city, created this network called Nicely, and got, learning together, got some city funding. And now I believe there are, I would say, over 15 community land trusts now across the city. So it's this really exciting, beautiful movement that's growing. Almost every day we have new groups contacting us to learn more and to support their organizing. So this is this kind of this site that you're talking about. I think this is such an exciting example of where community land trust could possibly work. One, I would say that most members of our organization are working to really focus on getting public land out into the hands of community land trusts. So right now we all know that getting land is so expensive, especially in the city. And so trying to pressure the city to get, dispose of the land really cheaply to the land trusts. This situation is a little bit different. It sounds extremely complicated, but I think that, I know that Nicely and our members would be, definitely supportive of providing resources, kind of advice on guiding the process of forming a land trust, helping with, technical resources, as well as just supporting and organizing. I think that the biggest thing, if considering community land trusts, is that, at least how Nicely members approach is really, really based in organizing and the grassroots. And so I think just making sure that that is a priority as you start, I know that this organizing has been happening for a long time, it sounds like, but I think, as you continue and think about, next phases and really try to make a plan, really prioritizing, the organizing piece. I also saw some people in the chat put out, thinking about who is most important to be at the center of that organizing, whose voices are you uplifting. So I saw, street vendors, people who are at the site of September 11th, whose voices, do you want to make sure to intentionally be putting, uplifting. So yeah, I mean, I think I just wanted to kind of present that as and let you all know that Nicely and New Economy Project and our members are here as a resource to you in this journey. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we just have time for maybe one question, maybe one or two, but we will see. So if anybody would like to answer a question, please unmute.
Todd, can I make one quick point?
Go ahead, yes.
I think the idea of the community land trust is excellent. Having worked on one of the original ones in the Lower East Side at Pratt Center, it is a model I firmly believe in. I think Tom's suggestion is absolutely an excellent one. However, we need to do more because the land trust itself will not finance the housing. I think it's important that we begin to look at and go to some of our members in the congressional delegation and tell us that their voices have been too long absent, because the original monies to finance the redevelopment of the World Trade Site with community development block grants from Washington, which were targeted originally to benefit low and moderate income populations. And Chuck Schumer, who's our senator, who now is the majority leader, should be called and made accountable for the fact that here, one of the principal investments of the federal government has done nothing to contribute to the diversity and economic justice in the city of New York. And I think it's important that we call and make sure that we're finding the financing and are pointing to the fact that we need to bring money to subsidize this housing and keep it permanently affordable by using Tom's suggestion.
Yes, and thank you. And I would like to add that our Congressman, Jerry Nadler, has actually advocated that project-based Section 8 possibly be used to finance something like this. And I guess it is conceivable that a community land trust could be financed by Section 8 or some other mechanism.
No, the two can be wedded easily.
Okay. One more comment and then we'll move on, or question? Okay, then I'll give it to Victoria.
Thank you, Todd, and thank you all of our experts. It was really helpful and informative and hopeful, which is what we're all here for. So thank you so much. So next on our agenda is just talking about the progress we've made since our last meeting. First on that list is our Tunnels to Tower run, and Jill we ran with Team Goodkind in honor of Tom Goodkind, and Jill is going to take it away for here.
Hi, good evening to everybody. And this past Sunday, many of the members of this coalition participated in the Tunnel to Towers 5K, which, as Victoria mentioned, Team Goodkind was in honor of my late husband, who had advocated for, my goodness, over a decade for 5 World Trade Center to be 100% affordable. The Tunnel to Towers organization, it's a very different group, very different size, but it shares with us an understanding of the need for housing for the families and for the survivors of 9/11. And it was really a beautiful event, and it was an uplifting event. And I wanted to say thank you to everyone who has participated. Thanks.
Show everybody your shirt, Jill. I see it peeking.
Shirts.
I see it peeking out. Can everybody see the shirt? It's awesome.
Oh.
It says Team Goodkind on the back.
Love the shirt. Thanks.
Yeah, that was excellent. That was really a great experience. So thank you. And thank you, Justine and Jill, for organizing that. It was really great.
Do we have the photo?
I don't know. Do we have a photo, Todd?
No, we don't.
All right. For the next one. So next is the outreach. As you heard, John, I don't know if John is still with us, John Feel from the Feel Good Foundation has been really kind to join us this evening and to tell us about the work he's done and really to support us. It's a great, we are organizations that have similar goals. And I thought, and working together is what's going to make us stronger. So we so appreciate that he took the time to be with us. And we also, the Downtown Independent Democrats passed a resolution in support of 100% affordable housing. So we are really pleased about that. And then Mariama, I believe you were going to speak a little bit about our media coverage.
Yes, and I apologize. I turned off my camera to do like a little housekeeping. I'm answering emails and things from back here. But I do want to talk. First, I want to go back a little bit before 9/11, since all of this stuff is pretty relative. This month, you know, it's can be very triggering and very full and sort of overwhelming and exhausting for many of us down here. And I certainly had my share of events. So going back to 9/9, actually, I was joined by others like John Field with or John and I joined the New York delegation, Chuck Schumer, Carolyn Maloney, Jerry Nadler, the officers of the firefighters union, the other firefighters union, the non-officers, a member of the police union was there, and a doctor. That was our whole group. And we were there to seek additional funding for the 9/11 health program. As you know, many of you know, it's been extended to provide coverage to people that are ailing from 9/11 illnesses out to the year 2090. But it's expected at this point to begin to run out of money in 2025. And so the New York delegation came up to request more money, and Chuck Schumer committed to adding those monies to the reconciliation bill. And I'm saying all this to say, we have this on one side, you know, where we're fighting for money to continue to be able to compensate those who are ill, the families of those who have passed away, and also to provide health care to people that are getting all kinds of pulmonary, you know, diseases, conditions, all types of cancers. And then on the other side, you have sort of like this let them eat cake, kind of mentality, and where we're ignored in terms of the need to maintain housing. And so I think it's very important that we sort of bring that bridge together. And that's why I'm really excited about the partnership that we've made tonight with John Field and the Feel Good organization. I've had the honor and pleasure of crossing paths with him many times, going back to first advocating for the James Zadroga Health and Compensation Bill, then the reauthorization, and now, you know, as I've said, now additional funding. And so he is somebody who represents organizations, unions, primarily under the first responders and general responders, but also, thereby the survivors in getting any acknowledgement and any coverage and any protection. So I think it's huge that we have him and we have them, the Feel Good Foundation, and that we have their extension into the unions. I think we're going to be a very, very huge coalition very, very soon. So that was on 9, all of that took place on 9/9. And then on 9/12, speaking of Tunnel to Towers, Jill and I, Justine as well, we all had the honor of reading names at the Tunnel to Towers event, where some of us wore our 100% affordable t-shirts, so in silent advocacy, so to speak, as we read the names of those who've been lost after 9/11. And then, coming out of that, we participated. Chris Marte had a press conference for Say No to Soho NoHo, and we participated and spoke there on behalf of the Coalition for 100% Affordability, and also encouraged the federal government to get on board with affordability at 100% affordability at 2 Howard Street as well, which is federal property. And between all those events, 9/11, Soho NoHo, and WTC5 directly, there were a number of articles, and the Village Sun did a tremendous one. I think that the author may be on the line right now, but there was also the New York Times. My family was featured in a couple of articles in the New York Times and other papers, and in some cases they mentioned WTC5. So I think the message is getting out, and we have to continue to make the correlation between you're seeking funding to protect people, and help to cure them or treat them for their illnesses, but they need somewhere to sleep too.
Thank you, Mariama, and thanks so much for the recap. You really did pack a lot in there, which we did do a lot, which is, what this is all about. So thank you. So I'm going to skip the question and answers unless somebody has a burning question right now. I don't, just wanted to let you guys know what we're up to. And I'm going to move on to our political speakers, our elected officials, and to come speak with us. And we're going to start with, actually, I think it's Lawrence. You're here for Yuh-Line Niou, Assemblymember Yuh-Line Niou.
Yes.
Hi, Lawrence. Thanks for being with us.
No, thank you so much for the invite. And I missed a little bit of the presentation because I had a bit of trouble getting on. But it was very informative and very helpful for us to kind of frame how we look at this issue. As you know, we've been very active on the WTC5 stuff, but especially on the affordability and housing aspect of it. I personally worked with Tom Goodkind for many years. He was actually kind of like my first mentor on Community Board 1, and I spoke to him a lot after meetings and stuff, and I still miss him to this day. And I think on my end, I don't have any particular updates about this issue. It's still an ongoing discussion with the agencies that are involved. I am happy to hear out any comments, concerns, or complaints. I'll leave my email in the chat box later. And if there's anything that people have to say about this project, let me know, and I will be happy to bring it along to our team and keep it in mind as we continue throughout this process. And I think the only thing I'd like to highlight is that for this project and many others inside of our district, a lot of these things are interconnected with each other, especially like 250 Water Street, this project in particular, the Soho NoHo rezoning, or at least some chunks of it, and other affordable housing district projects. And I think when we look in it inside of there, like a lot of these fights are going to be unified on the front of how we manage and how we apply affordable housing protocol for the future of what it looks like in our district. So that being said, meetings like these are really important, and thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much for being with us, and couldn't agree more in terms of these various efforts going on around our district. So, so next is our Democratic nominee for City Council, Chris Marte.
Thanks, Victoria. Not a lot of update here. We're always strongly supportive to make sure that this becomes 100% affordable housing development, and trying to build a coalition around it throughout this district. And so as we continue to campaign for the last month until November 2nd, we're going to be out there telling people to join this group, to join actions. And it's good to know about that upcoming action in the next few days, just to be able to send that out to our email list and try to get more people involved and absolutely that this becomes affordable. So let me know whenever you need our help. We're here, whether it's to hand out flyers, to join any rally. I'm excited to do so. And thank you all for all your leadership in putting this together. It's been amazing to see what you guys have done just over the past few months. So it's really encouraging and inspiring for people all around this district. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I'm sure we'll be hitting you up. So next on our list is our New York State Senator Brian Kavanagh.
Great. Thank you. Can you hear me okay, everybody? Good.
Great. Yes.
Okay, great. So it really is a pleasure to be here. I don't know if your meetings always open with like the royalty of community organizing and housing thinking and planning as this one did, but it really is remarkable. That was a remarkable lineup of you know, some of the great thought leaders on housing and economic development before, and I learned more than a few things during their presentations. So I'm very excited about this effort for several reasons. So since I became the chair of the Senate Housing Committee on the same day that we had this huge political shift in Albany, where Democrats finally had a functioning and actually very substantial majority in the Senate, and of course still controlled the Assembly and the governorship, we really had set out to do housing policy that would be transformative and sustainable and really a departure from what we'd seen before. The big challenge then, of course, was the looming escalation of the rent laws, but also the just the fact that they had been weakened for so long that we were losing hundreds of thousands of units to deregulation over time. So we got at it and we got that done, and it really literally the strongest tenant protection laws we've seen in this state and maybe arguably in the country in about half a century. Since then, we've been very much focused on COVID-related crisis management, making sure we have the moratorium in place on evictions and foreclosures, which I've sponsored now 3 times, and making sure we have rental assistance programs that are covering all of this rent. I said I'm excited about this because for 2 reasons. Number one is it is, I think, a great opportunity to get back to really forward-looking, getting beyond COVID, building back better, as the slogan is going in Washington and elsewhere, but also the fact that it's local. And I'm very impressed with the community activists here who have made such a priority. We live in a world where so often when an affordable housing project is proposed, you get this NIMBY response. Having a group of people from this community who are saying, not only do we welcome the amount of affordability that's so far, but we need to see quite a bit, we need to see quite a bit more. It's very exciting. I have had the opportunity, first of all, I sat down with Victoria and I've heard a lot from, others in this group. I've also had a chance to talk with the agencies. We had a group of us, Jerry Nadler's office and Yuh-Line's office, who you heard from, and the sitting council member office did have a conversation with the state agencies that are developing this project, that are responsible for these decisions. And we have conveyed very clearly that we think quite a bit more affordability is necessary. We've conveyed the fact that there are people in our community that want to see 100% affordability. It is fair to say that that the notion of turning this 1,325 unit building, at least as currently conceptualized, into 100% affordable is something that they are, I think fair to say resistant to, and I'm sure that's not news to anybody in this group. But we did challenge them on, first of all, being more transparent about the numbers, what resources are going into this project, what cash is coming out of this project. We did have a conversation about the fact that part of the concept here is that the Port Authority needs to be made whole for giving up some valuable land around the creation of the memorial. And, I think it's debatable as a polite word for how much a public agency that needs to be compensated for the land swap that was one of the early kind of underpinnings of this project. I've also had an opportunity to speak more recently with Congressman Nadler's office. I think it was mentioned before, he and his office have proposed using Section 8 vouchers, which may not get you large numbers of additional affordable units, but would be a very good mechanism to ensure that units that you do create are deeply affordable, because of course Section 8 vouchers ensure that people are not paying more than 30% of their income, whatever that level is. But I think that I've had conversations with several of you and with Yuh-Line Niou. Actually, I know her staff. We just heard from Lawrence. I actually had a conversation with her this afternoon that may not have been circled back since then, because it was just before this meeting. And I've also talked with Jerry Nadler's office, and I did have the opportunity to speak with Chris earlier. And I do think we would like to propose some kind of a forum where these agencies are asked to come to the community and talk about this project and what they think is possible with respect to affordability and how they respond to the very ambitious goals of the community, and try to get a little bit more of an open-ended conversation with them. So, my colleagues in government seem to think that's a good idea. I would like to get any feedback people have here today about that concept. And just to say more generally, I'm committed to working to find the resources to create as much affordability here as possible. I do think that we should be trying to emphasize ensuring that the resources that are used for this project are additive, that there are a number of existing streams of funding, tax credits, the Section 8 vouchers, and other things that are that in principle could be directed toward this project. But most of those pools of resources are considered finite pools, meaning like they get spent here or they get spent somewhere else. So to the extent we can leverage the community's interest in this and the role of the state agencies that have tremendous resources at their disposal. I also was interested, I had not thought about the fact that so much CDBG money went into this early on, there's been not a whole lot of what most people think of as community development that's come out of that. So that I think that's an interesting avenue to think about what the obligations are of the port and the other entities that stand to raise a lot of money for a project like this. But I think I'll stop there. Again, I'm very happy to be here. I've been here since the beginning and learned a few things, and I expect to have a continuing and great dialogue and to be supportive of all of your efforts.
Thank you so much for being with us.
If you're advanced on voucher, raise your hand.
We have a few questions, so it is time for question and answers. So Todd, I think you're going to have to manage this, but I believe Jill Goodkind.
Yep. Okay. Hi, Senator Kavanagh. I do think that the forum is a good idea. And as we all know, 5 World Trade Center is in your district. And the numbers I've heard about the new affordable units built in your district is really kind of below pitiful. I mean, I've heard something like 60, you'll know for sure over the years. It's really, really, really poor. But not only that, the number of affordable units lost in your district is staggering. I guess over 2,000 alone, if you count Gateway Plaza, Southridge Towers, and Independence Plaza. So my question for you, since this is your district, and you chair the Senate legislatures, the Housing Committee, what concrete actions are you taking to arrange financing and hold the LMDC and Port Authority to their commitment to build affordable housing on the public land of 5 World Trade Center?
Yeah, and Jill, I will just add to your litany of past losses that this Senate district was just about the largest in terms of the number of rent-regulated units that were lost to deregulation before the HSTPA in 2019. And of course, IPN and the Southbridge predate my time here, but I'm very aware and was at Southbridge yesterday. I mean, the goal is to get, I think that the goal is to get these entities to come to the table with more resources to make this building a lot more affordable. As the chair of the Housing Committee, I have a lot of, I I have a lot of say in what the Senate's position is in negotiations of the budget. We have a 5-year capital plan that is for housing. That is, we're at the end of 5 years at the state level. I passed a bill. The 5-year capital plan was kind of made up from whole cloth by Andrew Cuomo 5 years ago. There's no provisions of law that require it. I would say it has been, although the state has indeed done a fair amount of spending in the last 5 years, it has been very murky how the decisions have been made, how many units we're creating out of some of the streams of money in that. So I passed a bill with Steve Simberwitz, my housing counterpart in the Assembly, to require that there be a 5-year plan, to require that it be introduced by the governor with now her executive budget proposal, which will come at the beginning of next calendar year. And then we'll have a negotiation about how we're going to spend state capital dollars. I do want to caution that one of the reasons they don't develop lots of affordable housing in communities like this one, to the detriment of our efforts to have economic integration, racial and ethnic integration as well, is the tremendous cost of developing in a neighborhood like this. And it's not just the land cost, but that's a significant part of it. So the thing I said before, I'm hoping that we can push for the resources that come out of this effort to be, I'm not saying that all of the sort of existing affordable housing resources are sacrosanct or spoken for, or there are pipelines of these things. But again, we're gonna have a new capital plan. And I think the state coming to the table with some real money here might be a possibility. But I want to make sure that what we're doing here is additive, that there's a net benefit for affordable housing in this community, but there's also a net benefit for affordable housing for the city at large. We don't want to just be moving affordable housing resources from the Bronx or out in Brooklyn to this neighborhood. So that's the goal. I have not come to you today with a concrete plan and $500 million to spend. But I am, we're working on it, we're committing to it. And again, you have, a Congress member who's very talented and has great, some leverage at the federal level. And Yuh-Line, I know, is very, very supportive of these things. And we do have an incoming council member who I think is going to be, fantastic on these things. And obviously, we've also included Margaret. I don't know if she's represented here, but we are, we're working on it. And I'm as much here to hear, and I want to hear more from the experts you've assembled about, the practical options for funding a project like this.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Emily Hellstrom.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all elected officials for being here, because I think that sometimes we don't applaud when you guys show up and have substantive conversations. I think that it's sort of interesting to me to read the broadsheet article today when they were talking about 111 Washington Street and how there is there's a development company that owns that site that is actually knowledgeable about affordable housing and how to build it. And I think that is sort of not the case necessarily here. And I recognize what you say, Senator Kavanagh, that it is very expensive to build in Lower Manhattan, but I feel like it's all the more reason to have somebody who actually knows how to do this and knows how to do it well, which is sort of further, underlines the egregiousness for which this process happened away from the public eye, with a two bid, I think it was like a 2-bid process, and this is what happens. And this is, I feel like, what continues the cynicism of, people in our government, because, they're sort of saying it's affordable housing all the time. Then we have public land. There's a closed private process that nobody knows about. It's awarded to a very high-end fancy developer who doesn't know anything about affordable housing. And then they say, oh, don't worry, there's going to be like 25% affordable housing. It feels a little bit like there's an ish attached to the end of that, because, they take area mean income. And then that, of course, that area mean income is always way higher than what is truly affordable. And then it just sort of gets frittered away. So I feel like there is a huge skepticism on the part of the public. And so I feel like if there is a forum, then I feel like we really need you and people who are incredible housing experts, but also are people who have seats at the table to actually push these levers of change in government, to be really grilling these agencies and saying, we're angry that this is happening behind closed doors. We're not going to accept that anymore. And P.S., even if it isn't the most best way, this is owed to the community, and past bills have already been paid. Money has already gone, these swaps occurred knowing that affordable housing was supposed to be built here. So you can't just then 20 years later be like, oops, we spent the money. So anyway, I would be for a forum, but only if we get some real heavy hitters in there asking some real heavy hitter questions.
Yep, I think also we should make sure that there are, I mean, we can talk about what the panel is, but it should not just be, sort of glossy PowerPoints from the developer, right? We want a real conversation. And again, I will also say this, I'm the chair of the housing committee. I've been doing housing from a certain perspective for a long time. I am not a developer, and like the kind of expertise that is required to say this is the dollars that it would take to do this are not something I don't walk around with that. But I think it is important to push, and it's important to push for a range of affordability, including deep affordability for very low income people, but also we all know that people with more moderate incomes also can't afford to live in these communities. And I'm very committed to that. For what it's worth, I view it as my goal to make sure that no one in New York State is unhoused because of an inability to pay for housing. We have 90,000 homeless people in this state. We have grossly underinvested in housing, both with capital expenditures and with expense budget, subsidies for way too long. We have a prison system that discharges people. About half of the people who are discharged are effectively discharged to shelters. We have people living in public spaces. I proposed last year something called the Housing Access Voucher Program. We were talking about the benefits of Section 8. It is a state-funded Section 8 program. The Senate put up in our budget resolution a proposal of $200 million to get that program off the ground. It was whittled down in discussions in negotiations with the former governor. But I am committed to making sure that we radically transform what we do in housing across the board. And again, the Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act was a big start because it ended a process where we lost about 300,000 affordable housing units. I do want to emphasize, I represent this community. I love this community. I want this affordability to be in this community. We do have to make sure that we're having a conversation about how resources that go to this project affect the ability to create the affordability that New York and the whole city and the whole state and the whole region need. So it's going to be a complicated conversation if we're diverting direct state capital money or existing tax credits or Section 8 vouchers or anything else to this project. I'm on board with having that conversation in a serious way. I think it would be.
Can I just say then, if that's the case, then our neighborhoods cannot be called racist for resisting a rezoning that won't necessarily create affordable housing, but that then the state, and you're saying, well, we can't divert resources to help. So I just put that out there that I
respect that, and I
we actually have an answer to that.
Here. I know what you're referring to, and I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not saying resources can't be diverted. I'm just saying that if we want to do this and we want to do it in the public interest and we want to make sure that we are doing something additive to make the world better in addition to this community better, we do need to factor in where's the money coming from and what are the opportunity costs for other communities? Because again, especially if you're trying to get the legislature and the governor to step up and do something new in the context of the state budget, there are lots of mouths to feed. And again, we are operating in a condition of scarcity. There's not nearly enough spending on housing in this community or in any other community, at least in the metropolitan area where housing is so scarce. And upstate, there are different issues about housing quality and that sort of thing.
So we have a
an
few
answer
more
to that, and
questions.
the trickle down effect of gentrification, and when you don't divert funding to the right places. But you may get an answer like that from one of our next speakers. We have Justine Kucha.
If I can just interject, I think, given COVID, we're coming at a point in time where we need COVID relief. The housing situation has gotten to be critical. Our transit situation is critical, and our need to adapt to climate change is critical. The intersection of all of those at this point in time, I think, needs to be addressed by the state taking the leadership and taking the one law you have on the books, which is the stock transfer tax, and suspend the immediate rebate of that and use that money for a period of time and dedicate it to the COVID recovery, to making housing as a right a reality by investing in it and not pretending that rezoning actions create affordability. That's bullshit. What creates affordability is a subsidy going for the housing that's being developed. Zoning just creates opportunities for developers to displace more and more people.
I am with you on the we don't zone our way out of this. We need to spend again. We need to.
You should be with me on making that money available through the housing.
Through that particular, I am agnostic. We need to spend. We need to tax and spend more. I'm agnostic on which of several revenue proposals we should do.
That's $12 billion a year that we now give back to the financial industry that we used to collect until the 80s. It was on the books. It's still on the books. It just needs to be suspended. If you and a number of others sat down with the leadership in Wall Street and said, look, this is the crisis. This is the intersection of both the COVID crisis and the racial reckoning in this country. And we need to invest in housing and we need to invest in climate change. And then we can go back to giving you that tax break. And I think you could get them to do it, but you need to have the leadership that's willing to take them on.
I think to take them on, and also we have a new governor and we'll soon have a new mayor, and I think there needs to be a conversation about people making, again, that is one very good way to make very wealthy interests pay. There are others, including wealth taxes and some of the other things going on. But I agree. We need to. I have consistently advocated for spending much more money on housing. That's my role up there, and I'm serious about finding the money and spending it.
Good. Justine?
Thanks, Mariama, and thank you to Lawrence for Yuh-Line and Chris Marte, of course, and Senator Kavanagh for talking and expressing your support, really, for our proposals here. And I guess what I want to say is, number one, I really love the idea of having a forum, because there is a CAC that's set up, but the public's not invited to it, and they're not listening to us at all. And that's infuriating. So step one, yes, a forum is great. But step two, as chair of the housing committee and being so engrossed in all things housing, yes, you're correct. We need to look outside and look outside the funding that's already there. But I'm going to challenge you and challenge the politicians on this call to think outside the box, because part of what drives me crazy is listening to everybody speak, and we still have this box. And in this box, we can only do so much. What I want to tell you is, for every person you throw out of being able to afford Lower Manhattan, they are going and throwing somebody out of Brooklyn, who is then throwing someone out of Queens, who's then throwing someone out of the Bronx, who's then throwing someone whatever, and then they're on the street or out of the state. And until we look at this as affordability everywhere, and we bring every resource to bear, and we stop looking at making ghettos for the rich and ghettos for the poor and leaving the middle class out of it, we're never going to fix this, because at the end of the day, you're never going to be able to tax your way out of it, I don't think. I mean, I'm not smart enough to come up with the answer, but what I want to say is the system's broken. And a piece of what I keep hearing is, and I don't mean just from you, Senator Kavanagh, I mean, just in general, I keep hearing, is we need to work within the system. And I just don't think it's going to work. I don't think we're going to get any place.
Yeah, no, I think from a certain perspective, I'm saying the opposite of work within. So there's an amount of resources that we spend on affordability. We need to grow that dramatically. Ideally, we need this project to generate actual resources for affordability on this site, meaning like maybe the Port Authority doesn't need so much cash out of this deal.
Maybe the Port Authority made a mistake by giving the project to developers who are such high-end, looking at the bottom line. I mean, their idea is a fairly vanilla, like what they're doing is what you would do, what a private developer would do on a site. They would get the tax credits, and in exchange for that, they'd do 25% and they'd call it a day. And I think the message that that's not good enough is clear here. Finding the money to do more. I want to make sure it's not within the box of like, we're going to do affordability somewhere. It's either Lower Manhattan or the Bronx. Right. Agreed. We need to do it both.
We need to make sure we're doing all of it. And that requires more resources. And again, this project with this group of people pushing should be able to generate some resources and some support for affordable housing at this site. So we're not just taking the money from some other site and bringing it here. I mean, I've made this argument that I've only been representing this district for a little less than 4 years. I've been in the legislature for 15 years. I used to have to make this case. I used to have colleagues from the outer boroughs saying, deregulation in Manhattan, that's not bad. They're all wealthy. They can all afford it. And I would say, first of all, they're not all wealthy. And second of all, to the extent they're displaced from Manhattan, to the extent Stuytown lost 30% of its housing to deregulation, which was illegal at the time. All of those folks go find another neighbor to displace somebody else. And so we are very much all in this together. Again, what I said before, this is a great group of people to try to sort this out and focus on this need at this site. We do need to make sure that what we're bringing to the table is additive to the overall ability. And by the way, we also need to, just putting this project aside, we need to spend a lot more money on subsidizing rent so people aren't evicted, so they're not living in public spaces. And we need a capital plan that really develops the amount of supportive housing we need.
And we need to figure out developers who are doing more of what the Washington Street folks that was written about in the broadsheet, that of course I forgot the name and address right now, but more where they're not looking to be making millions of dollars in profit. How about they make 25% or 10% and they have affordable housing, and it's good housing and it's solid housing, and it puts people in their homes that allows them to stay in their homes. And we're giving them whatever tax breaks, whatever else that doesn't have an expiration date, because the 421A and the 421G or whatever it is that expires after 20 years or 30 years, all that does is bring people in, get them settled down, and then throw them out of their homes when they're at the point of retirement or their kids are going off to college.
Right.
It's
and
short-term. I'm done. But thank you all for letting me speak.
And 421A doesn't generate the amount of affordability. It's not.
I agree.
It's not worth the deal for the amount of taxes that the city foregoes.
Richard Corman. Richard.
Thanks. And of course, I also want to thank everyone who's come here today, all of our speakers and our elected officials. It's really important to us that we have your support, we have your input, we have your knowledge, intelligence, and experience. I'm not going to repeat all the stuff that you've heard, Senator Kavanagh and Lawrence, for Yuh-Line or Chris. I want to ask something very specific. We have been at the agencies. When I say we, I mean this group, Community Board 1 and others have been at these agencies asking for information, asking them for timelines, asking them for to change the plan, and we get at best generalities, vagueness, and at worst stonewalled. We certainly don't get the information that is requested, and you have requested a lot of this yourself, Senator Kavanagh. And so far as I know, you haven't gotten it either, and at least not yet. What I would like to know is, what I'm concerned about is that these agencies have a long history of acting behind closed doors, acting without community input or interest. And I am concerned that they're going to do that before we perhaps even have this forum, which I certainly would support. I think it's a very good idea. So my specific question is, what can we do? What can you do? Because I think it's really at the legislative level and the administrative level in government to make sure this doesn't get done before we have a chance to put something different together.
I mean, there are no guarantees, but I think there is an understanding that there would be a mass. They'd have a very big problem on their hands if they met with us, their Congress member, their Senator, their Assembly member, their council member, and we asked them for some very specific information. I mean, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, but like yes. the most interesting, like a super basic piece of information is, they are clear that part of this deal is to make the Port Authority whole, I think is the term they use. The Port Authority is getting a cash payment out of this deal. How big is that cash payment? And the answer to that question, when I asked it directly of the agencies, is that we can't tell you that because we're engaged in a procurement process, because we're negotiating. And there is this thing sometimes there's a moment in procurement where you're negotiating with multiple vendors and you don't want to say, well, this is the deal we're negotiating with this vendor because the other vendor will then have a competitive advantage when we try to negotiate with them. But what I said to them is like, I want to know very specifically what is the provision of law and that you're relying on to keep that information confidential, because they're saying they can't, we don't want to, or it wouldn't be out of interest. They're saying we're not permitted to disclose that number. And I said, I want the number. Not just me personally, we want to know what the dollars are. And I had a conversation with Yuh-Line earlier, and one thing she said that was very smart, I don't know until I can do the math what's possible here, but they need to be transparent about the math, about what public resources are going into this project, what cash is being taken out of this project. And I think you have a group of elected officials who are willing to push very hard for that kind of transparency. I think it is a lot easier to say, we're not going to reveal how much money is coming out of this project in a small meeting with a few people than it is to say that at a forum. We are going to make it clear that we want that information, that we want them to be transparent. And I think that one of the advantages of doing a public forum is that you will hear, there'll be, I think, media interest in that. There will be an opportunity for the agencies to hear directly from the community, but also for the larger world to make it clear that there are two very different competing perspectives on this. And one is a kind of business as usual. I don't think it's terribly negative what they proposed relative to what the sort of run-of-the-mill thing government agencies propose, but it's not enough. And I think we will have an opportunity to demonstrate that in a public way. And I'm not the forum isn't like a silver bullet, but I think it's a start. But yeah, we will be pushing for answers. And I talked to Jerry Nadler's office again today. They also will be joining us in pushing for answers. And I think we'll get better answers than we've gotten before.
And is there a legislative obstacle that can be put in the way of them completing this deal before we have our say?
You mean pass a law and have the governor sign a bill that says?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it is, honestly.
No, a piece of legislation requires the consent of the governor. So I think we need to make sure that the executive branch, and the Port Authority is a bi-state agency, but we need to make sure that they're engaged and that they understand that they need to. And I think what the agency said to us is, we understand what you're looking for. We understand you want more. We'll come back to you. I would be surprised and outraged if, there's an announcement next Tuesday that they're going forward with 25% and to hell with all of you. That would be that would be on the pale from behavior I've seen even from agencies that sometimes move quickly in non-transparent ways. I don't think they're going to tell the collective elected officials whom they met with to go to hell. We're just going forward without a further conversation.
Can we have, it looks like our final three. I'm sorry, Richard, do you have another comment?
No, I'm just going to say thank you. I hope you're right.
Yep. Okay. I appreciate it. I will try to make sure that that holds. But it's not passing a law saying don't go forward. It's like making sure the agencies and there's an elected governor who controls these bodies, and we need to make sure that they understand that we're serious.
We're going to have Victoria, then Victoria, and then Dashiell, the author of the wonderful article I mentioned earlier.
Hello. Hello,
Hi.
can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, Senator Kavanagh, Victoria. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Great, good, thank you. So, Senator, first, I was hoping that you could post for everyone in Lower Manhattan the Senate hearings with Renby, where our Senate Committee on Housing took Renby out completely. I thought it would help for all of my neighbors to really understand how hard our Senate fights for us. And really that everybody seems to have this misunderstanding that our Senate Committee on Housing are adverse our interest. And I thought it would really help if everyone could see specifically the hearing in Brooklyn that Senator Hoylman joined, and the man from Renby with no answers, where all of our senators went after them, and in the very big rent reform fight.
In the 2019 Brooklyn hearing
Yes, exactly. Everyone was on fire.
I can send people highlights. I think all of the material, we had hearings all over the state on that. And again, I think that I think the Housing Civilian Tenant Protection Act, which you're referring to, like, we ran the table. It's the first time large-scale real estate has not won a law that maintains their ability to weaken the laws, we eliminated all the loopholes that allow deregulation, just about all of them, and reset the amounts of money, the ways rent can go up, and again, secured that program, and changed the eviction laws and many other laws all over the state, and saw reductions in evictions immediately afterwards throughout New York City and also in places like Buffalo. So I'm in this fight for affordability and for fundamentally reshaping the housing market. I'm very serious about it. All those hearings are still available video-wise.
Yes, Senator, the reason that I brought it up, as you remember, I threatened to sue the Senate if they did not pass the loft bill with my very fierce neighbors in Lower Manhattan. As you will recall, to get our loft bill through, that it was discriminatory, that in fact the developers were given permits to correct violations where the tenants that invested in these buildings would not be. One of the things that we didn't do in the Senate, Senator Kavanagh, as you recall, and Michael McGee has spoken to this several times in Soho, is the loophole for demolition. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I recently noted, HDC posted it recently on Twitter, that in fact the UK and Paris have now dramatically altered the construction laws, where developers are literally being told that they cannot demolish buildings because of climate change, where our Senate, everyone in all of these battles across the city, whether it be Elizabeth Street Garden, the East River Park, Soho and NoHo, the Seaport, in every circumstance, Senator, what is happening is, as a result of us passing the strongest rent regulations in history, where our Senate was on fire, the developers and the real estate industry have now gone to the city, where the city is literally has a plan to knock down 185 rent-regulated buildings, where what the city is doing in every ULURP is against what every major city in the country is doing. And so what I would like to say for all of our neighbors is that we want that loophole closed by the end of this month. We want to shut down every one of these rezonings. They are a black eye to New York, to the United States of America, and to the Paris Agreement. All of the other major cities are a million miles ahead of us,
Okay.
while developers are toying.
Thank you, Victoria. Let him answer.
Okay, yeah, and thank you, Todd, and thank you, Victoria. No, I mean, the demolition loophole, as you know, is one of, there are very few ways to get a unit deregulated or dramatically increase the rent. There are really two of them. One is the combining apartments thing, which is, we have been urging HCR is supposed to change its rules and has not yet. And we may end up having to legislate something that says when you combine two apartments, it's not as it is now, which is the rent gets done from scratch. The other one is
Senator.
Yep. Sorry, the other one is the demolition. If I may, the demolition, there are two bills pending that are intended to close that. One is sponsored by Senator Hoylman. One is sponsored by Senator Krueger. I don't recall the assembly sponsors on that. When we were doing the laws in 2019, the tenant activists that we talked to believed that that was not a particularly big problem because landlords had just resorted to they didn't need to do something as dramatic as demolish a building. They could just deregulate. They could, use vacancy bonuses and other mechanisms to jack the rents up above the vacancy, the deregulation thresholds and just deregulate. They can't do that anymore. I have actually a bill that closes a series of remaining loopholes. We will look more closely at the demolition thing. And it is partly conversations about Soho and NoHo that have brought that to mind. I don't think there's any reason why we can't do that. And I think we can do it in the regular session in January before anybody manages to before that, whatever, if the community is successful in continuing to fight that and it doesn't happen, obviously there'll be time. But even if this administration rams it through before December 31st, I think we have ample time to clarify that you don't get to demolish a building and with a net loss of rent regulated units as a result.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you. We have two last questions, Victoria and Shaw.
Hi, Senator. Thanks again for joining us tonight. I just wanted to because I don't think we got a clear answer on whether there is any tools that you have as a senator to slow down this process. Now, I know you said that if we pass some sort of legislation, that the governor would have to sign that, and that's fine. That's something the governor would have to decide whether she would want to veto it. But what other things, if you think that's not a path that you're willing to take, what other things can you do?
It's not a matter of willingness. Like, we're not in session. We're not scheduled to be in session until the first Wednesday after the first Monday of January at the moment. I don't think I could get a bill drafted that directs the LMDC or the Port Authority not to do a deal, get both houses of the legislature to convene, pass the bill, and have the governor sign it. That's not going to happen in the real world. If it was my top priority, it wouldn't happen. I think we need to engage them in an active conversation that they understand that they need to be responsive to their elected officials and to their community. And I think we've begun that conversation with them, and they have promised us that they will get us answers and responses. And I mean, anything.
So if next week they do announce a deal and they announce it's all done, what can we do?
We can call the governor's office and tell them that that's totally outrageous and that these agencies which she controls lied to us. And I'm sure Jerry Nadler and Yuh-Line and Margaret will join in emphasizing that. And I think we get the deal undone at that point. I don't, again, like, anything's possible, but I don't think that they're moving on that trajectory, partly because they willingly had a meeting with us where they entertained our questions and heard our concerns and said, we understand we owe you answers. And I think we'll get answers before that proceeds. And again, I want to get in writing to them a request that they provide additional information, emphasizing we want to see more affordability, and saying that we'd like a forum to happen before anything further. And that will be copied to the governor, and I will be sure the governor's staff is aware of it. I can't, I am not the king, but I think we can prevent sort of a secret dead of night deal in the sort of very near term.
Senator Kavanagh, have you looked into the legality of the deal in the sense that when they did the RFP, they said that if a residential bid won, it would have to be a sale because of the Port Authority's charter, but now they're using ESD as a pass-through for a lease. Do we know if that's legal?
I don't, and I would be lying if I had said I thought that through. But we should look into it again. If we can make, if among our questions is how is this deal you're proposing legal, I think we should duly ask that question. I think that that also might be an avenue to litigation if what goes through is unacceptable. But I don't have an opinion on that, and I'm a lawyer, but I'm not going to try to lawyer that one right now.
Michelle?
Victoria?
Okay, sorry.
Hi, Dashiell Allen, freelance reporter. I just wanted to ask Senator Kavanagh quickly, have the elected officials, I wanted to just get this more clear, have the elected officials received the financials for? No, you haven't. And if
we had a, I don't think I'm breaking news here, really. I think some of my colleagues have talked about this. We had a meeting.
Right.
We said that it is important that there be transparency about the numbers around this building, because how can we assess what's their current affordability proposal, what's possible given within the resources that are available for this project without those numbers. And they said that those numbers are still confidential because they're in an ongoing negotiation, and it is their practice not to provide those numbers. And I responded and said, I'd like to know, what is the basis for that practice? Is it there again, they were saying we can't provide that. And I said, on what basis are you prohibited from providing that? And I want the number. I want, like, if absent some statute that they'd be violating by that transparency, I think they should be transparent. And I've said that to them, and I'm saying it, to my colleagues here.
And do you know what the steps that need to be taken are before the project can break ground? And have you been provided, to be clear, you don't have a clear sense of the timeline?
I don't have a much better sense of time frame. I mean, again, there are several people in this room who have been thinking about this every day for a very long time and have quite a bit of expertise assembled in this room. I don't have a better sense of a timeline or the financial terms of this project than have been publicly disclosed. Okay. But I've pushed for it. And again, joined by my colleagues, we're all pushing for transparency and a different outcome.
And I also wanted to ask the senator, but also the coalition more broadly, if there's been any outreach to the mayor's office, because I understand that the mayor's office occupies a large amount of the LMDC board and has influence in this project. So has the mayor's office been contacted, and what is their response?
We haven't gotten any response. I think early on we had tried, but we hadn't gotten any response. But it is, and while the mayor does appoint, I believe it's not, I believe it's half of the LMDC. Todd,
yeah, it's 50-50. It's a total of 16 members of the board.
But the chair is
the
appointed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the chair is appointed by the governor. And quite frankly, I think they're the same people who have been there for the last 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. So we have not. So, but certainly, thank you for putting it back on our radar.
Okay, thank you.
So I think, are we done with the questions?
Yeah, seeing no more questions, back over to you, Victoria.
Thanks, Mariama. So we're just going to try to wrap this up, but what we need now is a call to action, right? We need to keep up the pressure and let people know that we're paying attention, and that we're not gonna let it go. It's not going away. So Mariama, did you want to say this part, or you want me to take it?
I forgot I was back on. Okay.
I can take it. It's up to you.
I hope everybody that's here has already gone to our website, affordabletower5.com. And there we have our petition that does generate a letter that goes directly to the governor. that can also be shared on your social media. That's the first part, and very, very easy. And if you haven't done it, please do it like right now, and then share it with your friends and make sure that in your family and make sure that they do it as well. Also, we're going to be having some actions in the near future, some of which may be in person. On the 29th of this month, CB1 is having their executive meeting. Now, some of you who were at the executive meeting last month, when the ESD appeared, you would have heard that we sort of demanded basically a meeting where they answered the community's questions. And it was supposed to be held as part of the Quality of Life Committee meeting, which occurred this past Thursday, the 23rd. Obviously, it did not. They said that they were unavailable on Thursday. So they've moved it to the executive committee meeting. The downside is that at that meeting, again, there will be a number of licenses and permits that have to be heard. And this is the second item on the agenda. Prior to getting into this conversation, there's something about the budget that's going to be discussed by the board. But the bright side, the positive side, is both Tammy, the chair of the board, and Pat Moore, the chair of the Quality of Life Committee, both of which are members of the CAC for WTC 5 under the Port Authority, have committed to making sure that anybody that wants to speak is heard. So what we're going to ask that you do is on that day, I'll try to send notification out as to when the link is live. I'll try to pay attention to it being live, but you don't have to wait for me. When you're able to sign up for the meeting, and usually they open up the links at around 11, 12 in the day. You have to sign up before the meeting starts at 6. And when you go and you click on that live at CB1, whatever the address is, and a form will pop up, a Google form that will allow you to, state your name and the topic about which you would like to speak later. And so you also call raise your hand when you get to that meeting, but having already signed up, you should be called upon and you should be heard at that meeting. Then following that, on the 30th, the Port Authority is having their board meeting. So up until like 2 days ago, that was supposed to be a public in-person meeting. Maybe they got wind of that some of us were planning to attend, and they've made it Zoom only and closed to the public. They're only inviting credentialed press, as I understand it. So what we were planning to do is instead show up in front of the building with our shirts on at around 11:30 that day, because the meeting starts at 10. But the sort of public comment portion and where they expect the press to speak is at noon. So we figured we'd be out there from 11:30 to 12:30 at 4 World Trade Center, where the Port Authority offices are, where the meeting is going to occur, and welcome anybody who is able to join us in doing that, sort of like a rally right there in front of the building. And hopefully press conference. We're going to try to get some press down there, send out a release from the coalition, and plan an action. We have some shirts left if there are people interested in 100% affordable Tower 5 t-shirts, and we'll be wearing ours to that rally. Anything else? Victoria?
I think that's good. I guess we had so if, as Mariama said, to sign the petition, please, if you haven't, share that. And then also we are collecting videos about stories from 9/11 and housing affordability. So if you have a particular story that you could tell, that would be wonderful. We're trying to put something together on our website and eventually make some sort of a video of that. And we will at some point, I think, put together a phone bank and letter writing campaign just to keep the pressure on. So that's everything. So I want to say
thanks for bringing up about the videos. They can't be any longer than 3 minutes though, and I think 100 megabytes. That's the key.
Yeah, excellent. So yeah, so thanks so much. So if no one has any questions, I can wrap it up. I want to say thank you so much. This really is, it's truly an opportunity. we had tremendous experts. If we don't have an idea, if the land trust isn't working now, we have the greatest city in the world. We have the smartest people in the world, the hardest working people in the world. We can make this happen. We just need to keep pushing. So thank you all so much for being here. I just want to give a shout out to our steering committee, Taylor Banning and Richard Corman, Justine Kucha, Todd Fine, Jill Goodkind, Pat Gray, and Mariama James. Thank you all so much. Wait, do I see a
I'm
hand
so
raised?
sorry, Victoria. Victoria, I just had a really quick question just about data and on data, because I just feel like so much of this stuff, like economic development core, it's all about like money and who, big luxury development for whatever reason is perceived as bringing money into the city. And I just, during COVID, like our school lost fewer people out of the school system, like anecdotally, because there were people who were still at Southbridge who, were recently in affordable housing. And I just, I know there's like broad data, but I just wonder if in this specific COVID situation, if there are people who are doing a deep dive on the data, because I feel like, again, with these luxury rentals, so often people are more transitory. They're not staying, they're not, or if they're buying, they're not, this is like their second or third or whatever home. And so I just wonder if there's any data, COVID data, and if we could get an expert who's doing that, because to show that when we build back and we want to like say we're building back, what like saying that affordable housing, well, it doesn't build back as well because there's not as much revenue to the city, but those people stayed and spent money and investment in small businesses and all those things, went to the small hardware store on whatever street, so I just wonder if there's a data person who can help us with that.
So, I mean, that's a great point. And thank you. I'm sure, noted, and we'll look into that and certainly come back with some sort of, hopefully some data on that. But I'd like to just throw out there that, I think we got to make a choice about the values that we have. And is it about bringing big money to us, or is it about housing our citizens, housing our constituents? And we can do both. It doesn't have to be, housing is not, it doesn't have to be a loss. You can actually provide, I think it was, and forgive me, I believe it was Tom who was saying that, it's low cost housing, not affordable housing is a better way of calling it. But we need to prioritize. We need to say, yes, housing is a right. Housing is something that we want, and it creates stability for our neighborhood, for our communities. And that will eventually, it's not like people in affordable housing don't pay taxes or don't go to the local store.
100%. I could not agree with you more, but it seems like with these big agencies, it's like their job, like especially like economic development corporations, like both the city one, the Empire's development and the city one, it seems as though their job, and they're not really answerable to voters, and their job is to create revenue. And that is, to me, seems as though it's been set up as in direct opposition to affordable housing. And I feel like we need to tell a story with numbers that shows that that's not true, because I know it's not true. I saw it, I lived it in COVID, and certainly in 9/11, but we've have a crisis that was right now that showed it to me more than anything. And so I just wonder if we could possibly tell that story in numbers, because it feels as though these economic development corporations only speak in numbers and they don't see people. So anyway, I just put that out there.
No, absolutely. And that's a great point. So thank you. Does anyone else have anything they want to say, or thank you so much. Thanks for hanging in there. It was much longer than we intended, but I think a good conversation, good, worth the time. Yeah, and hopefully I will see you all tomorrow at the CB1 meeting and Thursday outside of 4 World Trade Center. But thank you.
Thank you.